everything. The way I walk, the way I breathe. Feel my fate shift into the night. But here I am, same old day. Sinking deep, no ecstasy. Reality haunts the living mind. If I saw another day, only to scream into the night. Nothing ever tries to change, even if I want to realize. 'Cause I've been sitting here, same old ways, taking off without the same mistake. Darling, when you go away, it won't be as simple for you.
Yo, guys, it is Old Man G here, RDS, back again, and I'm joined again by Tom the General. So what is obviously a weekly sale update, obviously trying to show later the week. And yeah, Glazers Ultimatum, QATAR bid. But before we get into the news, if you're new to the channel, to like, share, and subscribe to Red Devil Studio. Follow us on Twitter, We Are United X. Smash the notification button. We are on the road to 4K subscribers, guys. We're on the road to 4K subscribers. Only about, I think, 80 or 90 to go. So if we can get to 4K subscribers by my birthday, which is next week, that would be amazing. So please, if you are new, remember to like and subscribe to the channel. Like, it really, really does go a long way. So I appreciate it. If you have obviously any questions, if you want to support the channel, consider obviously becoming a member, or obviously click the super chats. That goes a long way as well. And if you do have any questions for us, for me or Tom, put them in the chat as well. So first and foremost, Tom, how are you doing? You all right?
Yeah, doing fine, G, as always, and everything. And yeah, thanks for having me on again. And yeah, I hope I can provide a bit of insight to yourself and your viewers as well on to do with Manchester United and the sale process right now.
Awesome. Thank you so much. And obviously, for guys who know, Tom has been very, very reliable when it comes to giving us good information regarding the sale process. I don't like to be reactionary to different things. So, but like when Tom obviously gives the message for the update, we get him on. So I appreciate that, Tom. Now, before we get into the update, I want to just say just a big thing. So hopefully everyone can just stay with me in the chat. And I said this to Tom just before we went live, is that I know that there is a lot of excitement and anticipation now because, you know, Anana's been signed. Hoyland looks like it's going to be here. And, you know, and what I've noticed is that a lot of fans, a lot of people have forgotten about the takeover because there's been no news. They've forgotten the fact that Glazers are at the club. And we are now in what I call second season syndrome, where fans, Twitter, all the rest of it are getting hyped because the new season is not that far away, and everyone is getting excited, forgetting that the Glazers are still in charge of this football club. And I'm worried that the Glazers are seeing this and going, "Oh wow, you know what? There's no rush, there's no hurry, there's no emphasis for us to sell because you know what? Everyone is happy." Guys, I want to remind you something: is that I don't care how much. And maybe this is the cynic in me, but I don't care how much Ten Hag is backed, whether lack of or whatever, this season. If the Glazers remain at this football club, it is not going to last. The direction that the management has right now, what you think of Jim Ratcliffe or not, whatever, the reality is that if the Glazers stay at the club, it's not going to lead to investment in the stadium. It's not going to lead to us signing major players. Cutting. That's not going to happen, guys. It's just not going to happen. Okay, so I think it's important that there is a reminder to obviously you guys that are watching, the fan base, etc., that just because we're signing players, we always sign players. We signed tons of players with the Glazers in charge. We're always going to sign players. I always knew we were going to sign players in the summer. It was just when and where. But the issue is the direction of the club, the actual investment in the club, and our ability to compete. Guys, remember, City won a treble last season. Are you honestly saying with what we have right now that we're going to be even close to City next season? And we can't get back to being close to City without new ownership. So, guys, I'm going to end with that because they've easily done a transfer show today, talk about Holland, talk about all these things. But I thought it was important to really know where we are, where we stand with the Glazers and the sale of this club, because I think a lot of people have forgotten. And I won't be surprised if come the beginning of the season, the Glazers are still in charge. There's no Glazers out. There's no talk about the transfer. And the Glazers are perfectly content to take as much time as they want because they know that no one is going to cause them any problems, you know? But that's my 2 cents. That's my 2 cents. I don't know if you have anything to add to that, Tom, before we get started.
Not really, no. I think really what you spoke was probably volumes around the Glazer family. As much as people say that they don't listen to what Manchester United fans have to say, you know, the PR that they put out there, they put it out there so Manchester United fans listen to it, whether they like it or not, whether it's good PR or bad PR, they still put it out there. And you put it out there for one reason, get fan engagement. And by moving in the transfer market a little bit differently than they have done, I think the way that Man United have negotiated the deals so far anyway for at least buying players, maybe not selling players for some of the values that Manchester United have recently with the players that they've sold, but especially the ones that they've bought in, they've never paid a club's asking price. They've always been consistent in they've negotiated a club down to a reasonable fee. Chelsea wanted upwards of 80 million for Mason Mount. They got him down to 55 at a set price.
Yeah.
And that's really all we have to pay because the add-ons are if United be successful and win things. Andrew Onana will be a similar story. I think it will be in and around the £45 million set figure mark, with add-ons maybe rising up to £48 to £50 million in and around that figure. But again, it's if United win things. So there is those consistency points there that United have got teams down from major prices, really. And I guess the big one will be if they can stump Atalanta to come down from upwards of 80 to 100 million euros down to a more reasonable figure to buy Manchester United and bring Rasmus Højlund to Manchester United from Atalanta. Really, that's the only other one that I think will, I guess, prove a point if things have changed. But I know United have appointed a new chief of negotiations for this summer just as a short-term solution because they needed somebody to fill the Matt Judge's role when he left as head of a guy called Hargreaves, I think his name is. I can't remember what his first name is anyway. But I think his background's more in law and logistics. So negotiating and finance, I think, is perfect for somebody like that, really, for that sort of background. But the way they've negotiated deals, I think, is good. But selling, I'm not so sure. They only got £4 million from a Saudi Arabian club for Alex Telles.
Yeah, that was interesting.
Says all that you need to know, really.
Yeah, that's interesting. So I and that's not why no one's winning. But it's the high wages that we put the players on. That's the thing.
True.
It's the high wages, and that's obviously what causes things. Right. Before we get into obviously the mainstay was obviously the Glazers kind of like ultimatum, and then a brief update around the QATAR bid. Just quickly, I'll just read some chat. So shout out to every carpy in the chat. Tell sold for 4 million. Serious, 4 mil is a joke. Should have been 10 to 15. Well, should have, but I mean, we're being fleeced by Saudi clubs, man. I mean, that tells you something. We're being fleeced by Saudi Arabia clubs, man. They're like, nah, we've got a lot of money, but we're not going to pay that amount for his wages, man. So there you go. Steven says, yeah. The good poll question, yeah. I wanted to see how loyal everyone was in the chat. I wanted to see how loyal everyone was in the chat because in fairness, there are some fans that are like, listen, I'm potentially done if the Glazers stay because I just can't see a positive future with this club at United. And even though you can criticize them and say they're flip flops, and I think that they should be loyal. There is some truth with that. If the practices the Glazers implement are the same as they've been in the last 10 years, where do you see Manchester United? That you need to ask that question. So okay, even Arsenal now look like they are. I can at least kind of see what they're trying to do. Got their business done. Got their business done early. Backing their manager, like they're building a project. I can see what's happening with Arsenal, with United, and what the Glazers are doing. I can't. I'm not sure yet. I'm generally not sure. No Qatar takeover. Leave Manchester United support 17 years. Well, that's extreme. It says, why is Jassim bid price for his first, second, third, and what is? Well, I think we might talk about that. I think there might be some information regarding that. So do you think Qatar will increase their bid? The Glazers will feel. Stephanie says Glazers will feel the heat from supporters when United are on tour. Well, I hope so. If you're in the US, give them the heat. Give them the heat, man. AJ Clark says, tomorrow I would still support the club. I just hope Qatar takes over. And James says, you're too negative. Chill. I'm just trying to be real. I'm just trying to be real. But I do want to be positive. Box says we won't get sold until 2024. It takes ages to get done. Yeah, and I don't disagree with that. I don't disagree. It's just that what I don't want is the success that United, or potential success that United have on the field, to delay the sale process. I want the thing to be wrapped up as soon as possible, because it's clear. I mean, to be honest, I don't know why there is, because the biggest issue we're going to talk about in the Glazers Ultimatum is that there's been little to no contact between the Glazers, and it's been radio silence between them, Sir Jim, and Qatar. And it's like, why is that? If you wanted to get a sale through, then there should be communication. So why are they not speaking? That you got to think about that. And if they're not speaking because they feel they have no pressure to sell right away, well, there you go. Glazers surely can't stay, because if they don't sell now, they definitely can't get the money more money, especially if Qatar put out. Yeah. That should be definite, but we'll see. Des Park says Matt Greaves, he was in negotiation.
Hargreaves, that's it, yeah. Matt, that's it.
Hargreaves, sorry. RSV says there could be another replication of Moyes' Ollie era if the Glazers stay. Well. There you go. Right. Okay, Tom. So yeah, regarding the Glazers and what we're hearing, that they're sort of not necessarily having to sell, not having to potentially staying. They're kind of ultimatum the bids. Like, can you just give us your updates, or the recent update regarding that?
Yeah, well, in terms of the Glazer family themselves, it's becoming very apparent, really, that everything's on the table. I would have said, 3 months ago, you was in a position where you had 3 official rounds of bidding. You had Sir Jim Ratcliffe's and Ineos's bid. You had Sheikh Jassim and the Qataris, and you also had the minority investment groups. The minority investment groups at the time were really a no-go. I think a lot of the groups that were involved in the process, and Carlisle Group, Elliott Management, SSB Partners, Oaktree Capital Investment, all those different investment and hedge fund groups were knowing that it was going to be a long shot. When you have Sheikh Jassim and the Qataris at one end of the scale, and you also have Sir Jim Ratcliffe, who's a British billionaire and multi-billion-pound petrochemical company, and to go up against those two to try and get a minority stake when they can potentially buy the whole thing or buy certain controlling stakes of it, it's very hard for those groups. But the longer the process has gone on, the Glazer family still have those options there. And the one thing that's come out regarding the Glazer family is that when they've looked at trying to get the best value for Manchester United, they never found the right time to sell Manchester United. And what I mean by they never found the right time was that the Glazer family for the last 5 years have looked at selling Manchester United at different points. But the problem is Manchester United have never had a sustained successful period where they can sell the football club to its maximum potential. If you have a winning football team, for example, that's just won a league title, it's a brilliant way to market and sell a football club, because the football team, which is what it is winning, but also the business will be a success from the team winning. Therefore, it's a successful model to sell. Where all they've really been able to ever sell was a failed football club model for the last 10 years. That's all they've really been able to try and promote to people. But in doing so now, where the Glazer family set up in November, I think it was October, November time, when, we're looking at strategic alternatives, the wording at that time from people close to the Glazer family has always been that they were looking for a sale. They looked at it as the Qatar World Cup, for example. The Qatar World Cup was at a similar time when they put the club up for sale, same with Liverpool. And all the big sports investors, all the big club owners and the Arab world was going to be in Qatar. The people who had money to buy, say, said football club or NFL team, whatever, if you're looking at potentially selling in the future or now, you go to a sports event like the World Cup and you speak to people, you meet people. And as I've quoted on here before, Nasser Al-Khalifi, chairman of QSI and president of Paris Saint-Germain Football Club, he had a £3.2 billion offer that he rejected for Paris Saint-Germain Football Club off of an American sports investor. So the people who had money to buy football clubs were at that tournament. And the Glazer family marketed the club through the tournament. And then from there, you had the emergence of Sheikh Jassim from Qatar, who wanted to buy United, and Sir Jim Ratcliffe threw his hat into the ring. And we're at the point now where the Glazer family is that all of their advisors I'd reiterated before are advising them to go for a full sale. All the stockbrokers on the stock market via New York Stock Exchange are expecting the Glazer family to sell. And the information that we have right now is that, providing that Joel, in terms of he can convince Avram, the person who is the last person of the member of the Glazer family to insist that they're prepared to sell, is Avram Glazer. That's the one person who's skeptical. And the reason why he's skeptical is the way that United are running the football club right now, the Premier League is only going to grow. So the value of Manchester United will go up based upon that the Premier League is a major success at the moment, above all of the other European leagues at this moment in time financially. And the other leagues really can't compete with the Premier League at this point in time because of the investment it has in it. The only league that can really compare to that right now is Saudi Arabia, and they're only just starting to build. But get a couple of TV deals in there and you might have a conversation. With the Premier League, because they have the biggest asset in terms of any Premier League club, which is the value that Manchester United can bring, not only as a football club but as a brand, it gives any potential buyer a brilliant export and investment for the future if they're prepared to stick in it the long term, and they can make their money up in the future. But the reason why the Glazer family is sitting here now is when they've looked at it for the past, a projection of 5 to 10 years, if they could ever have got the investment into build a new stadium, they would have done it already. That's the feeling from experts, is that if the Glazer family could have got the investment in and chosen a minority investment group, or chosen somebody who can buy a percentage or give them the capital to then invest in a stadium or a training ground and modernise, so then the club's valuation can go up that way via infrastructure, they would have done it already. And the reason why they haven't been able to do it is because they haven't found that partner, or they haven't found that investment group that's prepared to do that for them. Because, as I say, United is a failing business model and it's a failing football club. And it has been for the past decade, really, in terms of it's not seen the same success it had over a decade ago under, the reign of Sir Alex Ferguson and that sort of tenure. But right now where we are is that the four siblings, in terms of Edward, Darcy, Brian, the rest of them, aside, and Joel is the one that needed more convincing. Joel Glazer is open to a full sale, but at the Glazer family's asking price of £6 billion. That's the set price that they want. Avram is the only one that's holding the plate up here. And the reason why he's holding the plate up is the valuation of Manchester United can increase because the Premier League's expenditure in terms of the players that they're bringing to the league, but also the competitiveness of the league. For example, the new Champions League format, it gives another Champions League place in terms of you can finish fifth and still make Champions League qualification. It gives them another financial tool where they can still get Champions League football every single year, even if you finish fifth. And therefore, Champions League football sustains the Glazer family to stay in at Manchester United based upon the TV deals and the commercial rights that they get from UEFA and they get from the Premier League. Therefore,
so like, so obviously influenced. So just to add to what you're saying, like, so are we in a situation where, like, because Manchester United, essentially, I'm looking at it as a thinking, right? Okay, United in the Champions League next season. There's now positivity around the club with the signs of Ten Hag, etc. The Champions League format is actually changing again next season, where it's going to be like top 5. Obviously playing more games, which obviously makes more revenue. And chances are, even if United don't do great, there's still a chance that United will probably finish in the top 5. I'd imagine, so there's a chance, depending on how Chelsea and Spurs kind of do and what Newcastle do. So are we in a situation where the Glazers are literally like, listen, if we can just ride this out for the next 1, potentially every 2 seasons, we don't necessarily have to consider the takeover anymore? Or are we in a situation where, essentially what I'm trying to get at is this more of like a delay of the inevitable? And by the inevitable, I mean they're still going to sell the club. Or the Glazers thinking, actually, you know what? With how things are, we don't have to sell, and because the valuation is what we want, we'll just ride it out until we get the valuation that we want in how many years' time?
I think it's down to the latter in terms of what you said around that they have the option where they can stay due to the Champions League football at least another season, and the commercial deals that they have in place with the Premier League and also from UEFA from the Champions League rights. It means that they get revenue back into the football club so they can sustain to stay another season. I've outlined that many times on previous streams when United qualified for Champions League football. But it's come to the point now where they have to invest their own money into United to sustain the value that it's at right now. So if we're being in a fair world, I would say United, I'm not being a financial expert, valued around £4 billion at the very maximum. That's with what it is just at now. But because United has decayed and the stadium's decayed to the point that it has now, the value of United can only go down. It can't go up anymore than the value that it's set at right now. And the reason why it can't go up at the value that it's set right now is because you don't have any commercial partners that want to partner with you, because you don't have the brilliant brand spanking new stadium that you had maybe a decade ago. You don't have a competitive team on the football field that sponsors are wanting to partner with you because you're not winning things. You're not being a success, so that's no use to them. But then also, you don't have any sort of attraction to bring the best players to your club, which then brings more financing and more revenue from shirt sales, commercial sponsors, advertisement. But the problem that the Glazer family have right now, they've come to the end of the road as to where they have to put their own money in now to sustainably run United, even with the money and the debt that's on the football club right now. They have to use their own money. And hence the word strategic alternatives, because they are using this process as a way to feel out of, right, well, we don't have to use our own money. We can, get a debt from Elliott Management, just for example, of £1 billion. We'll build a new stadium and we'll sell them 20% of United, just as a rounded figure. But if they went and did that and then they get the money to then invest in a new stadium, well, then the value of Manchester United will increase. They have a new stadium. It's more modernising for the community, but also for Manchester United as a brand, which brings more partners in. So then the Glazer family can have more money coming in, therefore they can stay for as long as they want, really, in a maybe a fantasy world for them. But the problem is that nobody wants to invest into a failing business unless you're going to get something decent out of it or in return. And buying 20% of a football club that has been a failure, really, both financially in recent years, apart from maybe this annual year, and also failure in the last decade as what it is as a football club, it's not really a good investment of your money at 20% to buy in, really, unless you're getting something out of it. I don't know, you're getting, rights out of the turnstile gates at a new stadium, or you're getting part of a sponsorship deal with, I don't know, the NFL or, MLB or Major League Baseball or something like that, if you want to play games at Old Trafford, like, unless you get a sponsorship deal with, a big sporting corporation, then it's very difficult for you to sustainably bring revenues in. So the Glazer family, they have the option where they can stay, but they don't have to use their own money. Hence, use the word strategic alternatives. It's an open chapter. It's an open book. You're not saying that you want to sell, but you're also not saying that you don't want to sell. You're not saying that you don't want to take investment, but you're not saying that you do want to. So it leaves every single door open. And depending on what door they want to walk through, they have the option to do so. And if they don't, as you said, G, if they don't get the evaluation that they want of around £6 billion, then really the Glazer family can think, well, we can get a loan from Elliott Management, put it on the football club like we did when we bought the club, and build a new stadium, and we can sell, and then we can say, oh, right, well, that £6 billion evaluation for Manchester United, oh, it's just doubled. We want 12 billion now. And then suddenly, any really individual is out of the race to ever buy Manchester United. Because not one single person on their own will buy a football club over £10 billion. I don't think you will ever see the day in any of our lifetime you'll see an individual, whether it be an Elon Musk, Jeff Bezos, anybody like that, will buy a football club over £10 billion. I don't think it's ever going to happen. In our lifetime anyway. That's where then, if a nation state really wants a football club, they're going to have to fork out a shed load of cash and get it. And really, the only one that, if I'm being honest, in the modern world right now, has that money to do so, that doesn't already own a team, either in the Premier League or, Europeanly, that's as big as a brand of United, is Qatar. They've already got investments in sports. And as you say, they're in a process now just currently try and buy another football club in Manchester United. So the way that the Glazer family could look at it is, you either give us what you want now, or we can just take another option and we can stay and we don't have to sell anything. And we just, the motto is business as usual. We don't invest in the stadium. We don't invest in the training ground. There's no law saying that they have to. So they can just turn around and completely rip the rule book up and say no sale, but we're also not doing anything. We're just going to stick doing the football club as we are because we didn't get the price that we wanted. But it wouldn't make sense that you would get the two leading parties in Sir Jim Ratcliffe and Ineos and Sheikh Jassim the Qataris to a stage where they literally really have to submit paperwork to the Premier League, UEFA, and sign on the dotted line for transfer of funds for either or of the offers. You wouldn't put people to that lengths and to that fine line. Basically, you just need to nudge over the finishing line, and then you're there. You're in the Premier League office. You're in UEFA. You're proving you as an individual, where the money's coming from, so forth, and then you acquire the club. The Glazer family and Brain have got the bidders to the stage as to where they literally just need to sign on the dotted line, and that is it. So I don't understand why you would get people to that stage to then completely do a U-turn and walk away with nothing. It doesn't make sense. Even for people who have been as smart as the Glazer family through the whole process, where they've not had to show their hand once to state what they're actually doing, for 9 months to keep a lie for 9 months in a big £1 billion business deal, it's like Houdini stuff. I'll be honest, it's freakish. It's witchcraft, if I'm being real.
Witchcraft.
It is absolutely freakish that you can go for this long and you've not had to reveal what you're actually thinking or what you're actually planning to do. It's weird, and it's never happened before, ever, with anything. But this is Manchester United, and this is the Glazer family. And unfortunately for Manchester United fans, this is how they work and this is how they operate. They think about what's best for moi than for anybody else. And unfortunately, when you have 6 siblings who all have a different opinion, it takes time to then get a majority. When it's one individual, you know what you're thinking in your own head. If any of us owned Manchester United right now, the club would probably be sold because we'd have made his mind up by now. But when you have 6 different people who 4 of them have wanted to sell 18 months ago and they couldn't, you've then been able to convince one of the brothers that if the price is met, I'll be prepared to sell. You've then got the other brother who, in Avram, doesn't know if the club's valuation will be better if they keep hold of it or not. So really, you're at a quicksand stage as to where either you meet the £6 billion asking price and all of them will leave easily, or they're prepared to go down a different avenue, take a minority option, maybe do a deal with Sir Jim and potentially have a legal case and liquidation there. But apart from that, there isn't any other option for the Glazer family. And I think, as I've said before, just to round up, they've come too far, really. As much as these parties have come too far to lose, I think the Glazer family have come too far to not choose anything, even if it was to be a minority option. To come nearly upwards of 8-9 months into a process and not take the Qatar offer, not take Sir Jim in partnership with you, not take a minority investment group and financing. To not come away with anything would be disastrous for everybody, I think. It would be disastrous for all parties included because they don't get what they wanted, a stake in United or the actual club. And it would be a major blow for Reign because they don't get a commission fee on any sort of sale or investment. And it's also a travesty for the Glazer family because they're back to square one. If United don't get Champions League qualification, they'll probably do something like this again and say that we want partners, we want investment, we want to, or they might even turn around and say then we want to sell now. But the problem being, because they can take as long as they want, there's no time bar on how long they have to decide. They can take as long as they want, for as ever as they want. And if they ruffle a few feathers in the process, that doesn't ever bother them.
Thanks for that, Tom. And I think that's very good, concise about the Glazers' position currently. I think 2 things. I think the first thing, we've got 164 people watching, guys. Come on, but we need to get those likes up. So if you are watching who new, it's free. Like the vid, subscribe if you're new, get involved. So really appreciate it. Like it literally takes 2 seconds. So if you could like the vid, would appreciate it. The second thing is obviously I'm noticing a few comments about why we're doing the vid or clickbait or different sort of things like that. First and foremost, we only do a sale these days. We only do like a sale update like once a week. So it's not like we're posting multiple videos and multiple streams a week about the sale specifically. That's the first thing. And the second thing was the main reason why we're doing this, why we're doing the update for this, is because of the fact that with all the hype and all the talk, as we said at the beginning of the show, with the transfers, it's important to remind people of the actual situation regarding the sale of the club and the reality that the Glazers are in a position where they don't feel necessarily that they have to sell or act right away. Now that might mean NDAs or whatever. It's fine, So obviously, that it could be that people are leaking stuff, etc. But I think that the sort of optimism that a lot of people had going into this, and especially with the Sheikh Jim's bids, Jim, etc. A lot of that, essentially what I'm saying is that, like, don't be surprised if the Glazers stay at the. Don't be surprised if the Glazers stay and are still here at the beginning of the club, and don't be surprised if the sale does happen, that this gets dragged on into next season, into 2024 and beyond. So that's kind of the point of it, is that, like, we're not in a situation where the Glazers are imminently rushing to sell the football club, hence the ultimatum sort of thing. Like, we're in a situation right now where the Glazers who went from position of, oh, we're happy to sell the club to Jim Ratcliffe and announce Jim Ratcliffe as the new owner after the FA Cup final game, because that was the plan initially. We've gone from that to, we don't feel necessarily right now that we're in a rush to sort of sell the club. That's the thing. And so, and I think that's important because with all the signs, all the things that are going on, pressure. If you, like me, want the Glazers to sell the football club, it's important to continue to maintain the pressure on the Glazers to continue to be quick to act as soon as possible. Because from what I'm observing, and I said this at the start of the show, a lot of United fans have just forgotten about the fact that Glazers is still in charge and are just happy we signed a Nana, looking like St. Hoyland. And it's like, guys, we've been here before. Literally, Ollie's third season when we've got Sancho, we've got Ronaldo, we've got all these players now. We're going to win the league now, and it was a complete and total disaster, guys. So that's why this show exists. That's why we're doing it. So just so people can understand that, And to a Bog's point, the facts are the Glazers are unprofessional business people with no morals. Bought the club with loans, put the debt on the club, took out dividends, and I've never put a penny into the club. Exactly, 100% exactly. So I think anyone thinking that the Glazers have some sort of goodwill that they're in Russia, and that's what I just stress. Hashtag Glaze out. The community culture needs to still maintain the pressure because the Glazers, just like a lot of fans, will just forget that they're supposed to be setting a club and we'll just go into next season and the thing is, predictably, as soon as bad results happen, as soon as there's an upset, as soon as something happens, then people will remember. Then people will think, oh, yes, we're owned by the Glazers again. We need to and then it'll be too late, So, but that's my 2 cents there. But just moving on, obviously, just like of time. So, Tom, can you give us a bit of an up? Because obviously part of the update was regarding the Qatar bid and the circumstances around the links to state. So, can you give us a sort of an update regarding where Qatar and Sheikh Jassim are as well?
Yeah, well, the understanding that myself and colleagues have had for a long time, when the Qatar bid first came in and the interest was known that a group of wealthy Qatari royals were looking at buying into Manchester United, and there was an emphasis from the PR firm that Sheikh Jassim's camp have hired to do their publicity for them and the advertisement in terms of their sale. And the PR firms are like, you can openly inquire to them as journalists. You can openly send them an email. Listen, like, have you got anything for us? Have you got an update? And journalists work with PR firms all the time. They, football players hire them, agents hire them to work for their clients or so forth. So any information that you can get out of a PR firm gives you a credible source of information, but it's normally off the books. You normally don't say much about it, or don't, you didn't hear it from me, vice versa, and so forth. The wording that we've always had from the Qatari offer was that it's Sheikh Jassim's leading the bid as a boyhood Manchester United fan. His father, the ex-Prime Minister of Qatar and the ex-executive of QAA, the Qatar Investment Authority, which is Qatar's sovereign wealth fund. The way that it's worked with them is that the feeling is that Sheikh Jassim's leading it on behalf of the Al Thani sort of family, which is the ruling royal family of Qatar, and his father's supporting his son's bid. He wasn't initially interested, but his son Jassim has convinced him that, Dad, this is a good investment. This is a good way to put his money into something, and we'll see the fruition of it in the long term and the success that it will give us and also our nation, for which you have built for upwards of 15, 20 years, nearly 2-3 decades when you were Prime Minister. Come on, Dad, this is a good investment. And via doing so, Sheikh Jassim's father in HBJ has a lot of contacts. For example, in terms of QAA, Sheikh Jassim's father, HBJ, and the former Emir of Qatar built Qatar's wealth up primarily based upon gas. A lot of Middle Eastern nations rely upon oil. They use oil, the financing that you get from that, the exports that you can produce. Everybody's going to need oil at some point for anything. So oil's always going to be liquidated, and it's basically going to give you unlimited cash. Saudi Arabia are a big importer of it. You have it, other nations, Abu Dhabi, for example. It's all over the Middle East. Oil is an enrichment that will always flourish cash to the Middle East, to any nation that uses it. Qatar is the exception to the rule book. They trade very little oil. Albeit they have a lot of oil, they trade very little of it. Qatar used the net worth of, let's export gas, emissions, everybody's going to need to use energy, heating. And at some point in time, the Western world are going to need to come knocking on the Middle East door for energy supplies. For example, in the UK, there's been, the financial crisis at this moment in time, cost of living crisis, so forth. People struggling to heat the houses at Christmas time and so forth. Qatar stepped in and they can provide gas, they can provide energy investment to the UK economy in return for finance, capital. And the way the Emir of Qatar at the time, former Emir of Qatar and HBJ built it up, they built up a cesspit of upwards of $300 billion in terms of Qatar's sovereign wealth fund. And as I said, the investments that Qatar has, Harrods, Volkswagen, Barclays Bank, Sainsbury's, these are just more British and world-known brands to a lot of people. Paris Saint-Germain Football Club. And the Qatar World Cup even, that they invested at least upwards over £100 billion in building infrastructure, transport links. So they built really what Qatar has today. So HBJ is a very influential figure within Qatar. So if he has the contacts to anybody within that state. And I mean anybody, from the Emir all the way down to probably a chaperone. And anybody that he knows that has the financing or has the keys to unlock the sovereign wealth fund, which he built up, he's going to have access to some of those funds, either personally or he still has links within the government. And the way it's been looked at from us and from what we've heard recently from that side of things is that Sheikh Jassim is leading the Qatari delegation group bid to buy Manchester United. However, what we're hearing from the US, and we double-sourced it with sources that we've used close to the Qatari group, is that many high-level and ex and current officials within the Qatari government have had a massive hand not only influencing the number that Qatar and Sheikh Jassim's group have bidded, but they've also implicated the group financially to bid more. They've given the group more money to bid with. And the way that it's been worded now from the Qatari side is they see it as a national investment. They see it as Qatar can invest their money wisely into buying Britain's biggest football club. And they already have a brilliant relationship with the British government. And HBJ's father, as I said, built most of Qatar's wealth with the then Emir of Qatar from gas and energy exports, creating the wealth that the country has today. And his father has played an integral role regarding funding towards the bid, and for which the father, HBJ, has put some of his own money in. Jassim, his son, has put some of his own money in. But influential figures within Qatar
finish your point,
no,
Tom, and I have
okay,
a question.
Yeah. Have influential figures within Qatar have given the Sheikh Jassim delegation group their blessing to bid for United, and they have used the government's funding towards the Qatar bid. So what we know now is that some of the high net worth individuals who are in their own right, just wealthy individuals on their own, currently within the group and who have been influential figures within the bid from the Qatar side and Sheikh Jassim's group, hold senior roles within the Qatar government and have strong links to the Qatar royal state. And this wording that was before around that it's a private individual bid, and the wording around that, you can say that they need to create the separation from Paris Saint-Germain Football Club, which the instance has always been that they can. And therefore, from there, the way you're now understanding is that it's a Qatari-led offer by a boyhood Manchester United fan, Sheikh Jassim, who, as I've reiterated before, was educated at the same time as the current Emir of Qatar right now, Sheikh Tamim, at Sandhurst Military School in the UK. They went to Sandhurst at the same time as Prince William and Prince Harry. And the government have influenced the bid to buy United, for which didn't seem the case until the last few weeks. And when you put the dots together, and HBJ, ex-Prime Minister of Qatar, built the country's wealth up from gas, energy exports, upwards of $300 billion. And then that cesspit of money, he's been one of the two influential figures in doing that. And it just so happens his son wants to buy a football club. And he also knows the current now Emir of Qatar. You put the dots together and you join them all back, it leads straight back to Qatar's sovereign wealth fund and the current Emir of Qatar. Therefore, when the wording that it's been as a private individual bid, the understanding we always had was we knew high net worth individuals who had links to the Qatari state previously were involved in the bid, but we didn't know that until now that some of the individuals within the bid still hold influential roles within Qatar right now, whether they're on the board of QAA, QSI, I don't know, the Emir of Qatar's butler. Like, depending on what their role is, we don't know because they aren't named individuals. But what we do know is there is a link now between the state money of Qatar and the Sheikh Jassim Group bid to buy Manchester United. So the money from the Sheikh Jassim bid is from Sheikh Jassim, his father and their family, but also the government and the royal state of Qatar are also providing financing and funding towards the bid, for which we didn't know before, but we've now had it doubly sourced that that is correct. And that is our understanding.
Thanks for that, Tom, man. Really appreciate it. So much updates. Let's see. RDS 51 likes. Yeah, thanks, guys. Let's see if we can push to 75 by the end of the chat. Let's see if we push to 75. And any other chats. And then Pasty says Glazers is so now to get a cup of our club. The Saudi revolution is coming. Well, that is true. RDS, what is the poll situation? Well, let us have a look at the poll, which will still be up. So as it stands now. In fact, let me just make sure I'm updated. So as it stands now, there's been 126 votes, and it's quite close, weirdly. 52%. So will you still support the club? The Glazers stay. 51% say yes, and 49% say no. And that no figure is a lot higher. I thought it might be like 30%, but that's all. It's literally almost 50-50. So that is very, very interesting. There's a lot of people in this community that really want this sale process to go through and are tired of the Glazers. And I don't blame them. I think it might be a bit too much of an extreme case to go there. So, but I get it. I get it. So before we just move on, obviously, guys, if you have any questions to myself or Tom, get them in the chat, post them in the chat. We'll address your questions. I think that will help. Let's actually just move on just briefly. We might come back onto this. Stephen says we are losing a lot of loyal fans potentially. I mean, I think you should stick with your club through thick and thin. I think I get that, but I also think that that some people generally do not like the way the Glazers being owners, the way they handle the club, and the only way for you to protest sometimes is to leave. You are in control of the time that you invest in United, your team, etc. And if you're like, you know what, all I see is pain with these owners in charge, then by all means. And I don't blame you for making that decision, because not because in there nothing will change. So I don't judge either way. It's not me. I will still support United regardless. But when you have owners who are taking money from the club all the time, putting more debt, dilapidated stadium, etc., and they don't see a future, I get it. I understand. So yeah, I'm not going to be judgmental. Even though I wouldn't do that. Let's quickly move on. So we've obviously a lot of officers with the Qatar and Glazers, but there's obviously news regarding. We are going to do a transfer show specifically on Thursday, just to quickly with updates around it. But Tom, just briefly with the transfer news that are coming out. Obviously, Onana is pretty much done deal, sorted out. Do you have any updates regarding obviously Højlund with Atalanta? and the bid and stuff like that regarding that, and then potentially of any other players. So I think first part, Hoyland and any other players United will be linked with, and then we'll break into a second part about United sales, and obviously we'll leave with Tellez. But so yeah, go on with Hoyland first. Yeah.
Yeah, well, I guess probably start with Andre Onana. The understanding that we had was that it was United had Inter initially wanted a package in and around 90 million euros, and Manchester United were looking more towards the 50 million euro mark, and they basically met in the middle at 55 million euros, in and around that ballpark figure. And the figures, it fluctuates depending on the exchange from euros to pounds and pounds to euros each day. So depending on the settlement and when the transaction goes through, it's going to be between 40 and 50 million pounds, but it's more likely it'll be closer to 40 than it will 50. And from United's perspective, they feel like they've got a brilliant deal. They feel like they've got, in terms of the recruitment staff, one of the top 5 goalkeepers in the world for less than 50 million pounds. That's how the recruitment team at United are looking. And Erik ten Hag will be happy he's got the goalkeeper of choice that he wanted. Manchester United will be happy they got a brilliant deal for themselves. Inter will be happy it gives them the financing to go and buy another player in the market if they want to, or write off some of their debts and reinvest the money into the club. It gives everybody what they want. And Andre Onana, again, the understanding that I had initially was that it was going to be 4 years and an additional year. It's now looking more likely it will be 5 with +1. And the way that it's been looked at now is that all the paperwork has been signed off from Inter's side on the set fee. The add-ons have been agreed in principle around 4 million euros, which roughly comes to about 3.4 million pounds, in and around that figure. But United don't have to pay it unless Onana is to be successful, potentially winning the Champions League, Premier Leagues, number of saves or clean sheets or something along that figure. If he wins maybe the Golden Glove or something like that, there'll be some clauses that will be inserted, and we won't know that until he's actually signed on the dotted line to know what he has actually signed up for. And he's just tonight anyway, recently left Milan. He left the training ground early this morning. He was at the training ground early this morning, say goodbye to Simone Inzaghi and a lot of the Inter Milan players. He's left Inter Milan. He's now on a plane, as far as I understand, on his way to Birmingham, not Manchester, to do a medical there. It was the only direct flight, apparently. That's the reason why he's gone to Birmingham, before people start getting a bit worried he's going to the wrong club. Yeah. And he's going there via direct flight. They can do a medical in Birmingham if need be, or he can travel to Manchester and do it directly at Carrington. It doesn't really matter. The club are currently working on a travel visa for him to travel to the US. Whether he makes the plane journey to get on the plane with the players to go to America before they face Arsenal is in doubt, really, at this stage. But providing that they get the medical sorted and he's a player, he should be able to make the squad maybe bang on the game so he can be at the game potentially, or he can at least make the next game available on the pre-season tour. But you will definitely see Andre Onana, providing he passes the medical, which there's no reason to state that he shouldn't do, that he will play majority, maybe miss the first pre-season game, but he'll probably be influential in the rest of the pre-season games. And then he's on the game and he's on tour. In terms of Manchester United moving on from the Onana deal, they're now pursuing Rasmus Højlund, and they've taken a same stance again. The way Atalanta were looking at it initially was 80 to 100 million euros. United have told them that we're looking more the 50 million euro mark. Okay. And from doing so there, Atalanta said, no, we're standing proud. We want upwards of 85 million pounds for him. He's a brilliant prospect. He's one of the future strikers of Europe. And the market for strikers and the price that you're in right now, you're paying that sort of figure for Harry Kane. You're paying more for Victor Osimhen. You're paying, over 80 million pounds to get anywhere near a ready-made striker. and this one will be a future superstar striker. So you're going to pay top dollar for it. And the way United have gone about it is they then opened talks with Eintracht Frankfurt for Randall Kolomuani. So alongside pursuing a deal for Højlund, they also have a second avenue open for another option, which is Randall Kolomuani for, Frankfurt wanting 8 million euros, round about 72 million pounds, round that ballpark figure really was what they were looking at. Again, United wouldn't pay that sort of fee, but Højlund's the one that they want and the one that the manager wants. But if Atalanta don't come to a reasonable ground and want to negotiate the terms of the deal, because the way that I would expect United to be negotiating it is that the first bid would be a massive lowball and it will be rejected straight away. They then go up by a couple of million, rejected again. Then they put in a serious one that comes close to it or bang on what Atalanta want. And the way that United have handled the business before and for the whole window has been when they've gone for a more experienced player like a Mason Mount or an Onana, there's been less on the add-on side and more on the initial payment. Whereas in this case for Rasmus Højlund, they want to put a lower initial fee so that they're not having more of an outlay and a risk on a player that potentially might not turn out to be the superstar that everybody thinks he might, and put more on the add-ons if he's to score 20 goals, score 15 goals this season, to make 20 or 25 appearances, or and then potentially there might be even a further figure if United win a cup this season, they make top four, some different clause in there that then gives more of the add-ons from the deal to Atalanta as opposed to the initial fee. Whereas Atalanta want it the opposite way around. They want big upfront payment, small add-ons, if any add-ons at all. No add-ons at all suits them even better, and just give them straight cash up front. They don't want player exchanges. United, as far as I understand, have offered 3 different players. They actually offered Alex Telles as one of the players in the deal. Atalanta said, we'll sign him on a free transfer, which obviously they've got money from Saudi Arabia and sold him to Al Nassr. So you get money as opposed to a free transfer. I think I know which one a lot of United fans would have rather done in that case.
Exactly.
So that player was ruled out. They put Donny van de Beek towards the deal. Atalanta are stacked with midfielders right now, so they don't want another midfielder. And they tried to put Mason Greenwood in the equation. And Atalanta wiped that straight out of hand because they don't want another attacker right now. And they reiterated back to United, the conversation was, we'll take Amad Diallo back, but we want him now to come on our pre-season tour. And then we'll put more, and then we can negotiate a better deal. But Ten Hag wants to look at Diallo on the Manchester United pre-season tour, not ship him off to Atalanta on loan on their tour. So there's been a lot of back and forth between player exchanges, valuations.
That's an interesting. Just a question for the chat. Actually, maybe I might put a poll in it actually afterwards. It's like, would you guys in the chat, would you loan Amad back to Atalanta if it meant paying a lower fee for Rasmus Højlund? Let me know what you think in the chat, guys. Would you loan Amad Diallo back to Atalanta if it meant paying a lower fee for Rasmus Højlund? Let me know in the chat. But sorry, go on.
Yeah. And the way that Atalanta have looked at it is that Amad Diallo is the only player that they know worked in their system before because United bought him from there. So they know the player already and they know what they would get in terms of a replacement and a player to bring back in. With Højlund, Atalanta aren't really under any pressure to sell. They're a lot better run of an Italian club than others. They don't have a lot of debt. They haven't made a major investment in any infrastructure within their stadium. And they also don't need to offload players this summer for a change than they have done potentially in recent summers. And they are a conveyor belt club. They buy young talent from Austria, Switzerland, even bring them up through their own ranks in Italy, develop them, sell them on for a large portional fee. That's Atalanta in a nutshell. They are really, if I'm being fair, I would say they may be like an RB Leipzig of Italy. They are a conveyor belt club. Stepping stone, go to the next level. That club then gets a major sell-on fee. And with Rasmus Højlund, personal terms, as far as I'm aware, are agreed on a 5-year contract, and they were agreed back in May. So I think that shows the willingness that the player wants this move. He wants to come to Manchester United, and that's always a good thing when you have a player that wants to come, because we know what happened with United last summer when Frankie, I'm not sure if I want to leave sunny Barcelona for rainy Manchester. I'm not really sure about it. You know, I'm going from paella to pies. I don't really know. With Højlund, that's not an issue. He wants to come to Manchester United. And as my understanding is, he's a massive Manchester United fan. So the way that it's looking likely is that United are going to go for the same stance of they're negotiating the deal, but they are prepared to go up to 65 million euros as a package. Atalanta, I think, reasonably, if they're going to be reasonable, they'll ask for around 70 million euros. And I think that from there, they know the player will want to go.
This is an option, is it? This is an option, giving them Maguire.
Unfortunately, unfortunately, it's not an option. Unfortunately,
we're going to get to a segment about player sales once we finish here, because this guy is going to be front and center. But sorry, but yeah, go on.
In terms of Højlund itself, the player wants to come, and the feeling United is that it's hard to negotiate with Atalanta because they've been in conversation with them for upwards of 4 weeks, so nearly a month now, and United have never put in a bid for Højlund yet, but they've been working on other priorities. When you don't have a goalkeeper, I think that takes priority over a number 9, whereas you at least have one. Maybe that's not fitting Anthony Martial, but you have one. United don't even have a number 1 goalkeeper right now. And that's where United's priority had switched. But now the focus centric, as soon as Onana is signed, sealed, delivered, and he's already in the US, it's Rasmus Højlund who they want to work on. They want, and they're prepared to pay a decent fee and a fair price for a potential superstar player, but they're not going to pay stupid money for a potential player. When they can pay that sort of figure for somebody who's proven it in the Bundesliga and say Randall Colomboani, you could pay somewhere even in the region of that sort of ballpark figure, upwards of £80 million, and you could go and put in a case for Harry Kane if you wanted to. And with Manchester United, the way that they've conducted the business thus far, they've been able to negotiate every single club down. They negotiated the best-selling club in this window and probably for a decade in Chelsea, down from 80 to 55. That's good business for Mason Mount. They've done the exact same thing for Andre Onana, 60 million euros, down to 55 million euros, but they also don't really have to pay the add-ons. So they've got a deal for closer to £40 million, then they have 50. Better business for United. And now they also want to bring in a number 9. Rasmus Højlund's the one that they're targeting now and the one that they want. But if they don't get the player for the price that they want, and as I say, Atalanta don't necessarily have to sell Højlund. They could let him stay, let him develop another year, and then they might get that price from another European club. PSG currently right now are still sniffing around Højlund. So there is a competition element there, although PSG aren't expected to make a bid at this stage. But Højlund's the player United want, and normally when United put that first bid in, the negotiations start rolling and United start gaining more confidence that a deal can be done. And the feeling is that from Manchester United's side is that Rasmus Højlund will be on the Manchester United pre-season tour at some point. He won't make the plane to leave to go up to the tour with the players, but he will join up in time at some point with the squad. That's the feeling from Manchester United, that they can get the deal done. Whether they will or not is another question, and if they don't get the deal that they want, they'll move on to an alternative target. Randall Colomboani, that's the option that's, if you like, the side piece. If they can't get Højlund, they already have that avenue where the conversation is already open with Frankfurt. But again, if Bayern Munich don't get Harry Kane, potentially, they could turn attention to Koulibaly. PSG are looking at a striker, they're looking at Højlund. I wouldn't be shocked if they go and look at a Koulibaly as well. French international, there's that connection there already. So clubs are shipping around 4 number 9s, and United have decided upon the one that they want, which is Højlund. And they feel that they can get him for what they consider a fair price. It's just if the selling side in Atalanta are willing to play ball and do a deal with them.
Right. Okay. Just before we go on to sales, obviously and I've put the poll in the chat. So it's interesting. Obviously, a bit of interesting news how United have signed Johnny Evans on a short-term deal. Obviously, for him to come play games as part of the pre-match season, and get his fitness and what have you. But I put it in the chat, and I've sort of said, guys, I'm like, would anyone? Because obviously, Maguire, is basically been said to leave. I still think it's a bit weird that he put that. I don't care what anyone says. I thought that was weird. Like, yes, you've been stripped of the captaincy, but why did you have to post all that stuff on Twitter? I didn't understand that. I didn't get it. For me, you keep those things private, but it is what it is. But we've signed Maguire at least for the preseason. And I put it in a poll. What are people's thoughts? Would people take Harry Maguire for a year? Would people
Johnny Evans, you mean?
Sorry, Johnny Evans. Sorry, would people take Johnny Evans for a year? Because yes, he's obviously not Kim Min-jae, but what I would say is that if Maguire does leave, I think in centre back we're stacked anyway. So I think we've got Martinez, Varane, Lindelof. Obviously, Luke Shaw can play in there, and then you've got Johnny Evans that can give you something. Then we can, and we're not going to. Then we can obviously invest if we're going to spend more money on our option. We obviously are looking for a striker. I still think we can sign at least a 4th player, and that's probably, in my opinion, it's another midfielder. So you're probably going to get an Amrabat or something, and then that's it. That's no more no more signings. So, Evans coming in potentially sorts out potentially a centre back problem. I don't know what does the chat think. Obviously, the polls in the chat, and also Ilias has already said Evans in, slap it out. I still think Johnny Evans can ball. I actually think we were wrong in setting Johnny Evans and even to a certain extent Smalling at that time. But we'll see what happens. What do you think, Tom? What do you think?
I think to be honest, it's maybe something smart from United. What they did was Manchester United senior figures and Johnny Evans, when they left the club on brilliant terms. He's a boyhood United fan. The connection, the passion there. He's won trophies with the club, so he's still got a couple of friends at United. His contract had ended with Leicester City when they were relegated. United said, listen, come back. You can train with us. You can train with the first team. Get a bit of fitness under your belt, experience, and then go and have, a great rest of your career elsewhere. And from there, when he's had the training sessions, the understanding that I have is that the Manchester United staff have been impressed based upon his leadership, but also the experience that he's given to a lot of the young players in a short space of time. And the way he's really influenced the young players in a short space of time, by what I'm saying is that the mentality of the United have still got a player that has won a Premier League title in this squad. Is something that holds weight to a lot of those players, because you have a proven winner. You have somebody who's won a major honour at Manchester United. David De Gea was the last one you had, and you've just let him go for free. And now you've got one more in Johnny Evans. He has experience, and really, he's a steady player. He's not, and I think a lot of people accept he's nothing exceptional. No. But he's also not the worst thing in the world if you need somebody to do a job for you. And the contract that he's been given right now is you might as well call it a pre-season contract. It's to cover him for the whole preseason campaign. He's on the plane to go to the US with the squad. And from there, United, I think, depending on what happens with Harry Maguire, and if West Ham make an offer for him, which is looking likely that they will do so. Also, Newcastle recently, anyway, from today, have reignited their interest in getting a new centre half. They looked at Axel Disasi at Monaco. They'd looked at Kim Min-jae as well. And Harry Maguire is an option for them also. And I know there was some leaks today around Chelsea were looking at him based upon what's happened with Wesley Fofana. As far as I understand, that's not even true. It's not even worth talking about based upon Maguire to Chelsea. It's not a target. He's not a player that they're looking at. And from where United are looking at it with Johnny Evans is the experience and the influence that he can be, because it's not only just about having quality players who can play on the pitch. Having influential figures in the dressing room is just as important. You need characters. You need leaders. You need people who's won things. And you can look at it from two arguments. Casemiro's got six Champions League medals, but Johnny Evans has got the one Premier League title, or however many, that Casemiro doesn't have. So you have a parallel of players that have won the English League, but have also won European there. And having a player that's done that and has that experience of what it means to win at Manchester United is massive, and it's influential to Manchester United. And many felt, really, from ages ago, United let the wrong centre-half go. They should have let Phil Jones go rather than letting Johnny Evans go. Because at the time, it was one or the other. And United let Johnny Evans leave as opposed to letting Phil Jones leave. And that's been always a debate that's always been there that's divided the fan base. We made the wrong decision. And Johnny Evans, really, he's had a successful career. He's played at a high level in the Premier League. Yeah. And also, he won an FA Cup with Leicester City. Even
if Phil Jones didn't improve, the biggest issue for Phil Jones was even if it was his injury record. His injury record was so bad. Like Johnny Evans, like I've always said this. I said several times. Like the biggest thing is availability. Availability over. So no matter how good you are, like Martial's a good example. I think he's okay, but his injuries are awful. So it doesn't matter. So whereas Johnny Evans is still balling, So but let's obviously need to sort of round up. Let's look at outgoings now. I just want to bring up a comment from Matty. Shout out to Matty, who says, "Come on, Maguire won't go to a club not playing in Europe." Like we're going to talk about Maguire now. Now I actually dispute this, Matty, for the simple reason that you got to think about in the fact that the Euros are next year. It's Euro 2024 next year. We are going into so this is actually an important season for a lot of players. A lot of European players. I mean, AFCON is in January, but it is what it is. But for the Euros, and especially for England players, if you're not playing, there's a very good chance that you're not going to be called for the European squad. And yes, Harry Maguire is still England centre back, but even Southgate has got to think. Hang on a minute. This man has barely played for 2 seasons, and I'm going to put him as my centre back. I'm not sure about that. Not to mention the fact that there'll be others, because obviously Stones is assuming Stones will be a shoo-in. So it will be difficult. So if I'm Harry Maguire, unless like by somehow Gareth Southgate has confirmed that regardless of whatever happens, if he doesn't play, he'll always be centre back. Then okay, whatever. But if Southgate is to be believed, you cannot put your starting centre back for England for a guy who's basically not going to play. So he's not going to play for Manchester United. He's just not. So for me, I actually think that the move to Chelsea, if Chelsea are interested, will actually be a very good move for Harry Maguire. Chelsea, West Ham, some team where he can play regular football in the Premier League. Otherwise, I don't see realistically why he should be selected for the Euros. So, but I mean, Tom, is there any truth in Maguire to Chelsea or Maguire leaving or other teams? Like, what's the thought regarding Maguire?
I mean, with Maguire, the sort of wording that was put to me today was "fridge at the bridge."
Yes,
That's the sort of word that was
shout out
put
to
to
Stephanie
me.
in the chat. Shout out to Stephanie in the chat. Bridge the bridge, man. Yeah, yeah.
But
So
with Maguire, it's not even a conversation at Chelsea right now. They were looking at recruiting another centre back, but they wanted a younger centre back. So to bring in Harry Maguire, I think would have been a little bit odd, based upon
sorry,
with
sorry,
West.
sorry. Yes, yes, that's true. But that was after, so that wasn't for the. It might have been for Nations League, which people don't really care about, and it was afterwards. But I mean specifically for the tournament, because the last time Calvin Phillips played, he played. He was still at Leeds when he got picked for the World Cup, and then he went to Man City afterwards. So if I would be very surprised if Calvin Phillips doesn't play at all this season and still gets picked to play for England. Like that's just not gonna happen. Yeah, for Nations League and things and tournaments that people don't really care about because other players are like on holiday and are because they're available. Other holidays are on holiday, they're resting, etc. But when we're talking about getting picked for a major tournament like the World Cup or the Euros, I just don't see you only playing half an hour football without being enough. I don't think so. But sorry, go on, Tom.
No, like you said, it doesn't make sense regarding for England, and I think really for Gareth Southgate looking at it, I think he might have to rethink some of the squad personnel that's in his team right now. I mean, if Calvin Phillips doesn't get a lot of game time at City, there's a conversation there that he might need to be dropped. He might need to be taken out of the squad if he's not playing regularly. Harry Maguire's the exact same thing. You can't be fifth choice centre back, maybe even sixth choice behind Johnny Evans at Manchester United in the centre back position and expect to be in the England squad. The way England plays suits him, but the way Erik ten Hag wants to play with Manchester United couldn't be worlds apart. Worlds apart. And we had this conversation when Ronaldo was at the club. How's Ten Hag going to use Ronaldo? He didn't. That's the best way to describe it. He didn't. Maguire, he's not used him. You can't play halfway line football with Harry Maguire as one of your two central defenders. It's never going to happen. And Maguire and Ten Hag have always had this disagreement on where his best position is. Maguire has always seen himself as a left-sided centre-back. Erik ten Hag will never, ever, ever break his principles at any club that he's been at where it's an option. If he has a left-footed centre-back, they will always play left-sided centre-back. Always. Whether it was Daley Blind at Ajax, whether it was Lisandro Martinez, whether it was when he was at Utrecht, anywhere he has a left-sided centre-back who's left-footed, he will play them over anybody. Even the best right-footed left centre-back, he will play them over them. That's the difference. And Maguire has always considered himself a left-sided centre-back. But Ten Hag doesn't believe that he is, and that's his best position because he doesn't have the passing angles that a left-footed centre-back can open in a midfield line against an opposition. And with how Harry Maguire wants to play, really, I think he can have a successful career. I think he can still make the England squad, tournament after tournament. I think he can still have a successful international career. But playing fifth fiddle or sixth fiddle at United isn't going to cut it. And if I'm being really honest, if he wasn't at Manchester United right now and he was doing these sort of, and he wasn't playing week in, week out and these sort of things, would he even be getting picked for England? Probably not. If he wasn't United captain, I mean, there's a conversation there. Would he even be getting picked for England? There is a debate there, really. There's a lot of young up-and-coming centre-backs. Tomori, Gehi, there's so many young up-and-coming centre-backs that can take Harry Maguire's spot in that England squad permanently. So, really, I think he has to question in the circling camp is he doesn't feel like his place is taken. He feels like he can fight for his spot. Whether people want to believe that or not, that's another question. But the information coming out from Maguire is that he wants to fight for his spot at Manchester United, and he believes he's still got a lot to give to Manchester United. And the only real solution, I guess, from United's perspective is that they want a decent fee of the £80 million that they paid for Harry Maguire back. A decent fee to Manchester United is £50 million. But West Ham, Newcastle, even if Chelsea were interested, I'd be shocked if any of them went over the £30 million barrier.
Yeah.
I really would be shocked. For a 30-year-old defender who is, an England international, so forth, and £30 million really is reasonable.
How the hell did we pay 80 million for, like, I mean, Maguire's only been at the season for, is this his third season now?
Third season, yeah.
Yeah, how the hell did we pay 80 million for a 27-year-old centre back? Like, fair enough if he was 25.
Third or fourth season, I think. Yeah.
Is it? Yeah, because he came under Ollie.
He came under Ollie, but like Ollie was here 3 years already, wasn't he? So
second version, yeah. So it just worked because he came. Yeah, so he brought in. Yeah. Okay. Fine.
But
yeah,
like I said, with how David Moyes profiles his players, Maguire's a perfect profile for how David Moyes' teams play. If David Moyes was at Everton, he would go for a similar defender like Harry Maguire, a Michael Keane, a James Tarkowski. That die-hard, strong, aggressive defender. That's the sort of players that David Moyes likes for his defenders. Very similar with midfielders. Strong, hit straight into a tackle, brilliantly, astute of the game, can read the game in front of them well, but can also scan a backline behind them and be defensively compact if need be. I've probably just described Scott McTominay's game there, or the strengths of his game that suits a David Moyes' West Ham or a David Moyes at Everton. So there's a scenario where West Ham probably will make an offer for Harry Maguire, and the rumours that they'd made it a loan option to loan Harry Maguire is completely false. Manchester United are not looking at loaning him. They want a permanent solution sorting for Harry Maguire if they can get one. And looking at it from the perspective right now, as I say, I don't think a lot of clubs are going to jump over the £30 million barrier for a 30-year-old defender. I don't think it's going to happen. There's exceptions for some players. Casemiro was one of them, 6-time Champions League winner. Bringing Ronaldo back to United is an exception to break maybe £20 million for a 36-year-old or whatever he was at the time. There's exceptions. But for Harry Maguire, I think it's very hard to break that barrier, really. I mean, for the other players, Galatasaray are looking to re-improve their offer for Fred.
Yeah,
I think Fred will leave Manchester United, if I'm being honest. I think there's far too many clubs that are in for him, either not to create a bidding war between them all, or for United not to accept one of the offers that comes in for him.
Yeah.
Personally, I'd be stunned if he stayed in the Premier League, because I don't think Fulham are that serious about him than maybe first made out to be. They were looking at a cheap sort of £15 million, whereas you bring Saudi clubs into it. You also bring Galatasaray into it, which they'll have a decent financial package that they can put in place, maybe more on the side of add-ons than an initial payment. And as we've just seen with Alex Tellers, like Saudi Arabia's just bought Alex Tellers within 12 hours. Al Nassr have bought him, like done, sold, signed, see you later. Jetting off to Saudi Arabia to go play for Al Nassr with Ronaldo. So it can happen where you could have a solution where, as I said before, it was Al Hilal and there was another Saudi Arabian club that I was aware of that were interested in Fred just before the end of the season ended in the Premier League and before the whole Saudi Arabian sort of football league blew up really from this transfer window. And from there forth, I think it shows a willingness of teams that are prepared to come in for Manchester United's players. Dean Henderson, the negotiations with Nottingham Forest have reopened since they agreed a fee for Andre Onana. And I think it's very likely that Henderson will leave to go to Nottingham Forest or somewhere else, if not Forest. But I think Forest is the most likely solution. United looking at around 30 million, Nottingham Forest looking 20 million. they'll probably meet in the middle or
25 million Henderson would be good.
Put some add-ons on. 5 clean sheets this season. You pay us the rest of the money in the add-ons. Something like that. There'll be an agreement that they'll come to. I think for the players' sake, but also themselves. And as you say, Anthony Elanga, there's interest from Everton. RB Leipzig had an interest in him before they went and got Carvalho. So there is an interest from a lot of United players. But I think the big thing for United is that as much as people will debate around the transfer fees for a lot of these players that they're going to get, such as Box has put on the screen here now with Tellez 4 million, Chong 1 million, so forth. The latter 3 players that he's put there, disregard them from this conversation, but Tellez, Fred, Maguire, McTominay, maybe even, if you can get a couple of these players out of the door, even if it's not for the 30, 50, 20 million pounds that they want.
This also does kind of show how, Manchester City sold, I can't remember what his name was, but they sold him for 19 million.
James Trafford, the young goalkeeper.
Academy
to Burnley.
Is
he's not even played one first team game for Manchester City.
See, this academy is destroying us right now, so where the highest we sold is okay, so it's okay, Chong for 1 million, okay, fine. And even then we wasn't really, we signed him from there, etc. So we're not doing great in that department, and then you add on to what Stephanie's saying that Brandon Williams on a tour last doing for them. To be honest, the only reason why I feel like we're selling Dean Henderson and we're able to sell Dean Henderson and Fred, and even lesser certain Tellez, is because they seem to still have value. The reality is that I would have sold Brandon Williams and Donny van der Beek ahead of those 3 players, because I know that those 3 could have some sort of value to the squad. Dean Henderson, the second choice keeper, Fred in the midfield, Tellez, etc. I see no value currently right now in Brandon Williams and Donny van der Beek to the squad. And yet,
I think more so it's based upon with Manchester United is that if they get a lot of these players that we're saying about right now, a lot of them command very high wages. Alex Tellez was on upwards of 80 to 100 grand per week. You've saved a couple of £1 million salary there per year. You, as I said before when we discussed it last stream, with the Ronaldo wages, with the Cavani wages, the Lingard wages. All these players that are going off the wage bill, and people will say, well, you've signed up Garnacho to a long-term deal. Rashford's just signed a new deal today. Luke Shaw, Dalot, a lot of players are signing deals at United and they're putting money on the table to keep these players. But they're not being as stupid as they have been, over time. Marcus Rashford last summer had a £500,000, offer on the table from PSG, and he said no. He wanted to see what Erik ten Hag could do with him for this season and then decide when he was going into the latter stages of his contract. £500,000 a week, and he's just signed one for in the region of £325,000 per week, inclusive of add-on bonuses. So there's a situation there, but I think more the case of even if United get small fees for a lot of these fringe players that they're selling, the money that they will accumulate from selling them and say that the money that they will accumulate from saving to having to pay their salaries and wages will make up for a lot of the transfer fees that they lose based upon for selling the player, if that makes sense. They'll make more money back from not having to pay the wages, but also from the fact of they might get a low fee for that player, but they also save a lot more money in the long term, which then, as I say before, 4 million for Alex Tellez here, £80,000 per week there, might finance another midfielder, give you that extra money to get Rasmus Højlund, give you the extra money to get over the line with another midfielder. Maybe it might give you £4 million there if you want to go and buy the young lad at Uara Red Diamonds in Japan, in Zion Suzuki, the young goalkeeper there. They only want £5 million for him. Go and get him if you want him as a prospect backup goalkeeper. Go and do it then. You've got the money there to do it now. So as much as people will be distraught around the fees that they get, the money United will save in the long term will make up for a lot of that frustration around that United haven't sold a lot of players. But the reason why they not getting these fees, and people will say, well, how have Chelsea got upwards of over 150 million pounds in player sales. The players that Chelsea have got are quality players. That's the difference. A lot of United's players right now are fringe players that probably wouldn't make it onto a lot of the big sixes reserve bench, or even into the bench in their first team. You cannot sit here and tell me one fringe player at United that would sit on Manchester City's bench, because Manchester City's bench is just as good as anybody's first team, let alone their bench. So, basing it upon fringe players, the money United will save in the long term from wages is better than the fee that they might get right here and now for their player. Therefore, they're running it better from a business perspective because they're saving money in the long term. But yes, they're making a lot of losses on the money that they might have paid for said players.
Of course.
That's the only problem.
Of course. So last time, I'm just trying to think, have we gone through them all? Yeah, we talked about Maguire, talked about Fred, talked about some of the others. So I'm just thinking, I think that's the gist. Oh, sorry, yeah. One last thing about Elanga. There's reports that Elanga may, because Elanga I think is one of the places that wants to put Elanga to Everton potentially. Is there there's truth in some of those reports?
Well, there's Everton and there's Nottingham Forest. Everton put in an undisclosed figure, but it was roughly estimated they put it in for around £10 million.
Okay.
United were looking more £20 million. He's a young player. He's already an international player with Sweden, so you can play on the strings of that. He's got a lot of development still in him, and if United would prepare to lower the asking price, if they get a sell-on clause in there or something around that, or maybe a buyback option or something in that sort of insert a clause in there, they'll come down in the price if it means that they make more money in the long term from a sale of that player potentially or development. So there is a situation there, and I mean the way that United have really conducted end of things. If they did a good bit in negotiations and business with Nottingham Forest for Dean Henderson, there could be a conversation there. Right, well, we've got Dean Henderson in the door. Look, we like Anthony Elanga as well. How much? And they could potentially do a deal there.
Yeah, 20 minutes for, Elanga for me is one, because I do feel Elanga was unfairly treated in the sense that he was kind of thrown into the first team, whereas I feel like he should have been really sent out on loan to develop better. And it's kind of like, it's not kind of worked out. But like at the end of the day, people are forgetting, as you said, he's an international. He's still very young and he can still develop. And this could potentially be one of those situations where it's like he were to go to a Dortmund and suddenly get better, and suddenly everyone's like, we need to turn back again. So I just feel like selling a player like Elanga for anything less than 20 million would be an insult, because it's not like he's old. And it's not like he's not got potential. And I still remember that goal he scored against Atletico Madrid, by the way. Forgotten. That last goal that we scored in the Champions League.
I think he was probably the best player under Ralph Rangnick.
He was actually our best player in that game, quite frankly. So yeah, I think that people are, because we've signed new toys, as it were, people have forgotten him and have kind of made him a fringes. But quite frankly, he's contributed more than Anthony Martial has for the last 2 seasons. I'll keep it a stack because of his injuries, So boxes. Yeah, another Liverpool as well. Liverpool's can play Brad Smith, Nekoins, Ibe, Slanke, exactly. We yes, okay, it's good to hold on to your kind of players like Rashford, etc. But I don't know what it is at United. We talk about our academy, I can't remember the last time we sold an academy player for good money. So because those guys were not going to be getting into Liverpool's team, and yet they were sold for they were good enough. We just have not been able to do it, and I don't get it. Eric with the chat says, "This is a very underrated channel. Smart commerce always. Love listening to Tom. Thank you so much, Eric. Really appreciate the positive feedback. Really, really do so, because if you don't really, I know we have the like button, but it is nice to actually read positive comments about the channel and the work that me and obviously Tom do here. It motivates us to do more and to offer more stuff and to really invest, because it is literally, when Tom was in here, it is literally just me getting staff, designing things, and all the rest of it, stuff like that. So it can be difficult to do this whilst also working at the same time. But thank you for your positive comment. Really appreciate it. I think there was one thing. I think someone said ask. We ready? So what about Van der Beek and Eric Bay? Is there been any interest in clubs from Van der Beek and Eric Bay? I think Matt's saying, yeah.
In terms of, I guess we'll start with Eric Bay. In terms of Bay, there's interest from France. Marseille would take him back, but on another loan, with an option to buy. But United would push for more of an obligation. There's the interest, as I say, from other French clubs. You could have a situation where potentially if Monaco sell Disassi, for example, to a Newcastle, maybe even a Manchester United, he's a target for them as well. So they could look for a centre-half, and Eric Bailly might do a job in the short term for them. You never say never with Saudi Arabia, as we've just seen today with Alex Tellez. So... I've been propping up for ages that there was interest from Sporting Lisbon, there was interest from Benfica, Porto, all the big Portuguese clubs were interested in him, but on reduced wages. And as soon as Saudi Arabia come in with the big money and the big wages, see you later, I'm off. And it's not, and literally signed, sealed, delivered in less than 12 hours. That's it. And looking at it from this perspective with Eric Bailly, you can never rule that out for a Saudi Arabian club. I mean, the sort of quoting that were coming out from United, they'd take £5 million. £5 million they'd take for Eric Bailly right now, if they could.
Yeah, man.
Villarreal, there was a situation 12 months ago where they were looking at taking him back potentially, but that never materialised, and it's not really resurfaced recently. And as I say, there is always going to be that element of option that the Saudi League's always open to buying fringe players, and why not buy a new centre half? Why not? There's a lot of reasons why Eric Bailly might be useful if he's fit. He's a decent player, and for the quality of that league right now, it might be quite good for him. But for United as well, it gets a player out of the way and out of the door as well. With Donny van de Beek, I think it's interesting. I think, as I've said before, United, they have really three midfielders that they can look to sell. That's Scott McTominay, Fred, and Donny van de Beek. The latter of which was more likely coming into this window. But now, from where we are now, Fred's very likely to leave, and I think he will leave. I think if you get rid of two of the three that I've just mentioned, and I think Van der Beek would probably be more likely to leave than McTominay. I think based upon that, if United get rid of two of those three, they need to bring in one more. That's the issue. Or they potentially, take a gamble on Kobe Mainoo having a decent breakout season, and he covers up for that spot that they need for one of the other two players. But it's a gamble and it's a risk on a young player that you don't know if he's going to be a success or not. I guess the pre-season tour will give an indication as to if he's ready or not. But based, as we've just said, around United, they could still keep some of the young players on if they can't find loan moves for them, or they think their development's best to stay at United. Hannibal, for example, could be a situation where he could stay. So you have another midfielder to make up the numbers there. I know I'm clutching at straws here, giving some options, but that's just where we are. And with Donny van de Beek, the Italian clubs are very interested in him. As I said, United tried to include him in a deal to go to Atalanta. Atalanta didn't need any midfielders, so they said no. There was a situation a couple of months ago with Roma were interested in him. He still has interest in the Premier League. I've heard in the last couple of weeks with Crystal Palace were interested in a midfielder, but they were looking at maybe Conor Gallagher on loan or somebody like that. Get somebody like that back on loan if they can, and so there's a situation there for him to stay in the Premier League if he wanted to. But I think really, the door is always open for Ajax. The door is always whenever they let a player go, there's always a way back. providing you don't leave on bad terms, maybe like an Andrew Onana did with the drug, scandal and the gate that happened there, and providing you don't leave there on bad terms, I think there's always a way back. You've just Daily Blind left to come to Manchester United from Ajax, went back. Like, it happens. It can happen for some teams. So for Manchester United, I think Donny van de Beek will always have that option to go back to Ajax. But look, Ten Hag's done wonders for Marcus Rashford's career, and if we're being fair and honest, Donny van de Beek, even under Ten Hag, hasn't had that 4-5 games to really show what he's about. He didn't have that under Ole Gunnar Solskjaer, who was a novice of a coach, and now he's going to have it under the guy who knows him best. He's really his footballing father that he knows from Ajax. So maybe there is a role for Donny van de Beek to play in terms of 5-6 games.
What fee is actually realistic for VDB? I would say probably about 20 million, wouldn't you? Similar to Elanga, surely.
If I'm being fair, I was looking more around 10 million. I'll be honest. If we're talking realistic, I don't think clubs are going to break over 15 for a player who, for 3 seasons, really has either sat on the bench or has been injured. That's the way that clubs are going to look at it. And that's why I said before, United would be looking to get 5 million for Eric Bailly. For somebody who's hardly ever played. I don't think he's played one game in about 12 months for United. Like, it doesn't make a lot of sense for United to get a lot of money for a lot of these players. Donny van de Beek is one of those fringe players, really, if you were to sell him. But unless, like I say, Eric Ten Hag sees something that we don't, and if I'm being honest, in the game that he got the season-ending injury, I thought he was pretty well. He was playing very well in that game before he got injured. So, and got the leg breaker. So there is a situation there, but as I said, the door's always open for Ajax. So I think if there is a club that would ever take him, I think Ajax would take him back straight away. And I think, look, there's a situation maybe in Italy, potentially, still in the Premier League. And look, I'm going to reiterate again, never say never Saudi Arabia. One of them clubs, if they want a midfielder, they might just come in and say to Donny van de Beek, Man United, there's your £15 million, or there you go, G, there's your £20 million. Give us Donny van de Beek. We'll pay him over the hill. Right, we've got a midfielder. It can happen. It can happen. So, never say never with a lot of these players right now, because Alex Tellers, I think, is the first one that's come in to go to Saudi Arabia. And I think I wouldn't be surprised if there's maybe 1 or 2 more that do end up leaving United to go to Saudi. Fred, like I say, might be one of those. And, there could be situations for a couple of the other players that Manchester United maybe try and get rid of. It wouldn't, Saudi Arabia are going to target young players at some point. They're going to look at City's academy and think, who's the best youngster in City's academy? Let's get him. Let's bring him to the Saudi League. Who's Hannibal Mejbri at Manchester United? Tunisian international, brilliant young player. Let's bring him to the Saudi League. Let's try and make superstars in our own league. That's the way that they're going to look at it. And look, if you give a decent fee for a young player at a football club, like I say, upwards of £19 million to get James Trafford from Manchester City's academy, basically, to be in the first team. I mean, to not even play a game for Manchester City. That's the sort of figures that I'm talking. If Saudi Arabia were to do that.
And that's the way. That's where Manchester United should be. But it's quite clearly they're very, 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 very far from where we are. Right, guys. Obviously, it was a bit about transfers, but we're going to have a proper, full, in-depth transfer show on Thursday. Obviously, if anything happens since then, I suspect Onana will be officially announced by the end of this week. So we'll probably have a live welcome to Manchester United Onana show. I'm hoping to get a guy, an Inter guy, an Inter guy and a Ajax guy, and they can sort of give us a bit of a tactical lowdown behind Onana, what he'll sort of contribute to it. So stay tuned for that show. That'll probably be Friday or Saturday. I've not scheduled it yet, but obviously no more. And obviously Thursday evening, again, 10:30 BST, we'll have a transfer show as well. So, guys, remember, thank you so much for watching. Really appreciate it. Remember, if you are new to the channel, remember to like, share, and subscribe to Red Devil Studio. Follow us on Twitter and Twitch. Links on the description. Make sure you check out and follow Tom, who has been the GOAT journalist, as you know, at Tom Journalist 1. So, yeah, hopefully everyone enjoyed the show. Have a nice evening, guys. And cheers. Peace, peace, peace.